Shadow Labyrinth can be challenging for warrior tanks. This will be a guide for making it a little easier, especially if you don't have crowd control. I did have crowd control for this run, but I typically go without unless people want to, and then I roll with it. The first room is pretty easy. As long as you have a slow weapon, even a level 70 green, your Devastate will generate quite a bit of threat. I don't mark in the first room. Most DPS will attack whatever you have targeted on the pole. 2 Devastates or a Devastate and a Shield Slam on the pole target, then you can cycle to the other 1 or 2, putting 1 or 2 Devastates on them. By now, even with the low DPS group, the pole target will be mostly dead. If you still have aggro, hit him with a couple more Devastates and you can safely cycle back to the other targets. At this point, even if you lose aggro, he won't be up long enough to kill any of the DPS. Go ahead and use your AoE taunt on the Imp group. It's on a 10-minute cooldown and you aren't going to need it before it's up again. It may seem a bit tedious to pull them back so far, but accidentally pulling a Fell Overseer can wipe a group, even a well-geared group, which this is not. Pulling all of the mobs to the same spot will improve your group's DPS. The less they have to move, the higher their output will be. It's critical to pull the Fell Overseers back. They have an AoE fear that goes about 20 yards. Taking them to the same spot, on the side, lets your range set up at a safe distance. Stance dancing to pop your Berserker Rage can be difficult to time, but if you have an overgeared healer and you've built up enough threat, you can tank in Berserker stance while you wait for it, but I rarely do. I try to keep my Will of the Forsaken in reserve, as it has a longer cooldown. If you have a PvP trinket, you may want to equip it until after the first boss, as you will be slowed and frost novaed in addition to the fears. Although you understandably want to get back into the action as fast as possible after being feared, if you are trying to move when the fear ends, you increase the chances of ending up inside a wall if you're close to one. The pillars that you can use to line of sight the casters are narrower than they look. You gotta get close. Usually it's helpful for the mage to sheep a caster at range, but the boss is going to start pathing around the room as soon as the last one dies. It's critical to pull him back. Let Ambassador Helmaw path for a bit. With all of the pulling back required in this room, you really don't have to worry about mana breaks, but you want your DPS full for the fight. Standing in one spot and pulling him with a range shot helps your DPS get rolling faster. It's also good to drag him back to that spot after a fear, if it's not too far. The Malicious Instructor can be safely pulled when she paths by the empty bench. She does apply a debuff. You may need to wait for it to drop off before you do the big pulls. These are the worst pulls in Shadow Labyrinth, but keep in mind that the casters do not hit hard. You can often mark a skull and mostly ignore it, as it will die before it can kill any of the DPS. This also spreads out the damage, making it a little bit easier on the healer. This is where the rogue was trying to help, and to be fair, spreading out the damage taken by the group did help a bit, but getting Skull and X down faster would have helped more. As a healer, you do not want to apply any healing on a pole. I'll cut the druid some slack because they have to ramp up their hots when the tank is taking heavy damage. To offset this on future pulls, I popped a healing potion to restore my health after my blood rage. It generates a small amount of threat on all targets. The rogue popped Slice and Dice, an attack power trinket, and Blade Fury before they were even in position. He may have been targeting Skull, but he was hitting X just as hard. The Warlock started casting Seed of Corruption while I was struggling with the rogue shenanigans. It didn't end well for him. I love my Warlock. I love Seed of Corruption, but casting it before Skull is down is dangerous, even with a Pally tank. Soul Shatter, the Warlock spell that cuts their threat in half for all targets, makes a very distinctive sound, which is absent from this recording. Basically, everyone screwed up except the mage, who helped quite a bit by sheeping one away from the group on his own. The next pulls go much better. A moment on crowd control and threat. While sheeped or sapped, mobs will not have their aggro tables altered by healing or other non-damaging effects. While immobilized or stunned, they will. There's a kind of poetic justice when a rogue gets jumped and stunned by an assassin. Being able to quickly intercept and intervene is critical on this fight. When he knocks you in the air, you will lose a portion of your threat on him. If you can intercept before you hit the apex of your flight, you can often keep all of your threat. I've used many different strategies for this fight, but having your group spread out will reduce the chances they will kill each other during the mass mind control. Applying damage debuffs can also keep them from dying when he has his little charge tantrum after the mind control. That bastard blew my 10-minute cooldown AoE taunt. On the healer! The 4 pulls aren't too bad. The Cabal Zealots will usually cast, but not always. You can use the mounds to line of sight them, and Spell Reflect is your friend. They'll often stop at the top of the mound to cast on you. Grandmaster Vorpal is really just a tank and spank. Make sure to get off the platform quickly after he teleports you there. The trick to pulling in this hallway is to wait for Murmur to kill the mobs connecting one group to the next. Sometimes you have to wait a while. The Executioners have a wicked whirlwind to watch out for, and you never want to get aggro on the Spellbinders if you're not their tank, as they will cast mind control on one random person, but not on whoever is at the top of their aggro table. You do not want the tank getting mind controlled, as all of the other mobs will move to whoever is second on each of their aggro tables. The summoners suck as they can summon adds, but these are not that tough and are easily tanked. Murmur does not hit hard. It can be hard to generate rage for some builds, but you must leave enough in reserve to intercept back to him, because he doesn't move and will start casting on the ranged or eating the other melee DPS if you take too long getting back into his hitbox. After the first sonic boom, if you have enough of a lead on threat against the other melee, switch to Berserker stance and spam execute. You won't take much more damage, and he'll go down a lot faster. This has been a layman's guide to tanking Shadow Labyrinth as a protection warrior. I'm the Expert Layman. Happy tanking.